Good morning, Zack.
Good morning, Dr. Paul Byrne.
Thank you very much for granting me this time to interview you.
It's no trouble, sir. Thank you for coming.
Last night I met you at the lake where you work.
Yes, sir.
A beautiful lake. Tell me, are there any fish in that lake?
We got big crappie, a little bit of perch. We got walleye, saugeye, alligator gar, and every type of catfish you can imagine.
So when you're there, you're able to help people to enjoy life?
I I enjoy helping people with questions they have about the lake, and it's mostly a retirement or family lake, and it's enjoyable whenever you help people find a good place to fish and just enjoy life.
Yes. You were involved with an accident?
Yes, sir. That was November 17th, 2007, and fun time down on the river kind of ended badly.
Yes. So you were on a four-wheeler?
Yes, sir. I was on my 450R Honda, and we were coming back from the river to my buddy's house, and went around the corner. Of course, didn't have on a helmet, just a lid that I always wore at the time, and it blew off my head. So I turned around to go get it, and at that time, my two buddies that were with me passed me by, and I slowed down, get my cap, and then I went ahead and did my drag race launch. Went through all five gears with the front end in the air. And headlight don't do you no good whenever it's pointing up. I saw one of them fly by on my right side. I hit my back brake, slammed the front end down, and there was Colton right in front of me. I cut it, panicked, wasn't nothing I could do. Last I remember is flying through the air sideways, biting the handlebars, and then letting go.
He was my miracle from the very beginning. He is adopted, and he always had such a loving nature. He was just drawn to everyone he could talk to. He was just like his grandfather. He could talk to anyone. He didn't meet a stranger, and he would do anything for anyone. And as he grew up, he had a little bit of an adventurous side to him that I didn't always approve of, such as riding his four-wheeler with no helmet. And he always told me he had his helmet with him, just wasn't on his head.
Yes.
So he just he always had lots of friends. He loved children, and they all loved him.
You were instrumental in saving Zach's life.
I don't know about that. I just doing what I felt like I needed to do.
Yes. What was it that you did?
Well, man, I guess it all start kind of right here in Frederick. Frederick is where I worked at the hospital, but I wasn't working that day. My wife got a call from his dad, Zach's dad, Doug, and we were out in the yard, I think, just messing around. The kids were riding their little motorcycles and stuff, and he said, "I need you to come to the hospital. It's really bad. It's Zach, and it's bad." So we got there, and boy, it was bad. Seeing Zach in that state, he was almost unrecognizable. There was even some gray matter coming out of his ear. You could see it. A large, large swelling on the backside of his neck and bottom portion of his head. And we just went right to work on him, getting lines started or using the lines that the paramedics had already started and accessing more, and just doing what we could to get the swelling down as best we could while we had the helicopter en route to come get him and take him to an advanced level of care. I think that was instrumental in his road to recovery, but from then on, it was just it was a pretty grim deal.
that was probably one of the worst times that I will hopefully ever go through.
What year was Zack born?
He was born in 1986.
And of course, that's after 1973 when they legalized abortion. And so Zack's mother had Zack. She did not have an abortion. And so we're grateful to her that she did not do an abortion. And of course, it's possible since 1973 that he could have been aborted, but he wasn't. So he lives on.
I actually got to meet Zach's birth mother, and that was one of the first things that I told her was how thankful I was that she chose to give him life.
Yes.
Because without that, he wouldn't be in my life.
Next thing I remember was laying in the hospital bed, not being able to move, breathe, couldn't do anything, on a ventilator, and I heard someone say, "I'm sorry, he's brain dead, he's passing away." And there's nothing I could do. You could just get mad. I couldn't do anything to assign at all, and just kind of let it go.
Did you want to do anything?
I tried to.
What was that?
Tried to scream, tried to move, and just got extremely angry.
Yes. So it had to be a very painful time for you.
Yes, sir.
While we were there, they had pronounced him brain dead and done everything to prove that was the case. And everything that I could see, now I said what I could see, was telling me and was confirming what they were saying was true. Even up to and including the day that Zack kind of came around. But just had an inward knowing, being a man of faith and being around people of faith, my wife being a believer, and others believe in God for a miracle, believe in God that it wasn't his time, and trusting in him to lead us through this deal. Really, I think that's all that was done. Now, there were some clinical things that took place that kind of helped to paint the image that we knew in our heart what was to be true, and thank God for that direction to be able to do that. All the way through school, I remember my wife and I would pray that this knowledge that we were receiving was transferred into wisdom, and that we could use it and apply it in our daily lives. And I felt like the Lord really done that for us, So we received the news and on that day, and that morning it really looked, he was real bradycardic. He wasn't breathing. The ventilator was doing all the breaths. He had 14 per minute. Just with the ventilator doing what it was doing, there wasn't any additional breaths that he was taking on that morning. Pulse was low. Blood pressure was low. But through that day, we just could not accept. I couldn't accept. My wife couldn't accept, and others that were around felt the same way. I remember talking to Doug, and Doug said, "Dan, if Zack comes out of this, is he just gonna be a vegetable?" And I said, "No, I don't think so. I'm not believing that. I'm believing that when he comes out of this, not if, when he comes out of this, I believe he'll restore. I think God's gonna bless this deal." And just couldn't accept anything less, And I remember that morning, and knowing what was going on, that the organ liaison was meeting with the family, and they were making final arrangements and things of that nature. And I respected that because that was his wishes. But I just wasn't quite sure that it was that time. And I knew in my heart that I didn't feel like the Lord was letting me think that it was Zack's time. And as far as I can tell, he's got control over all this, not us clinicians. And so I remember in the hallway, my wife and I were together, and it was an area that was close to where they were working on Zack in the ICU. But it was an area they were doing some remodeling. It was kind of dimly lit and dark, and I just remember feeling, my wife too, that we just needed to pray. I remember us hitting our knees right in that hallway. I remember the cold floor and, just the hospital environment that we're used to. But we had that area where we could get together and just call out to God. And this was, I think the organ transplant team was already en route to that hospital. And I just remember us praying, God, we need some direction in this deal. Because everything we're seeing is telling us and indicating that this is the appropriate maneuver. But what we knew in our heart was not confirming with what we were seeing with our eyes, that it was not his time. And I'm there just like I am today. I don't look like a nurse. I don't look like a nurse today, but that day I didn't either. I was in my regular clothes that you just always wear. Now, if I'd have been in scrubs, maybe they'd have listened a little bit different, But I remember going back into that room, and other family members were there and were concerned. And I remember asking, I told my wife, I said, I just got to go ask, are they going to give him a chance to breathe? Because through that time, after we prayed, I went back in there, and Doc, you could see that his blood pressure had changed, that his heart rhythm had changed. And at that time, when we felt so strong to pray, it was shortly after that, I had a chance to be in that room by myself, and I noticed some things looked different on the monitors. I knew it looked different. He had a bigger, stronger pulse, and he was breathing over the respirator. The ventilator was breathing 12 to 14, and Zack was having 16, 18 breaths. And I knew that was him. And those are just confirmations to me, but how can I communicate it to these people that are so educated, and they just see me as a hick? I'm in there in a button-up shirt, and I don't look like a nurse, and I was in RN school. I had only been an LPN for a few months at the time. How could we get them to listen? And, well, as the situation would have it, it was just not very long before the team was scheduled to be there. And there were quite a few clinicians, nurses, and lab techs, and different folks that were in the room. And the organ donation liaison was there, the facility, the local representative, if you will. And I remember asking, and about that time, Zach's uncle was in there as well. I remember asking, are you guys going to give him a chance to breathe before you start operating on him? And she was doing her job. I think based on all the knowledge and the training that she had, I think she'd done a great job. Because I've seen people that are concerned before, and I've seen families that aren't quite educated on the issue and clinging to every hope, but maybe even if it's a false hope at the time. And I can understand dealing and having to be diplomatic in that situation. I did that kind of stuff for a living myself, but I was on the other side this time. And I remember asking, are you guys going to give him a chance to breathe? Are you going to pull the ventilator and give him a chance to breathe before you do any operations? And she couldn't really confirm or deny that, Pretty generic answer. I said, have you guys done any tests on him? You done any more tests? And of course she said, yes, we've done all kinds of tests. And I remember back into training and the Lord prompting, that every bit of this to me was like I felt almost like, I don't know how to explain it. I don't want to act like I was possessed but I was having direction. I was receiving direction at the time. I believe the Holy Spirit was giving me guidance to ask these questions. And I said, have you checked his Babinski's? And of course, I didn't have an ink pen with me. I didn't have a reflex hammer for sure. And they weren't going to offer one up. So that's when I pulled my pocket knife out. I didn't open it up. Lots of the stories say that I scraped the blade of my pocket knife on his foot. I didn't do that. I just needed something sturdy. Zach's a big old boy. My thumb, pretty strong, but Zach's a big kid, at the time. And I was going to need some kind of instrument to check that. Well, I remember checking his Babinski's on his, it would have been his right foot. So I checked it, well, they teach us, I guess, in brain death class that if the toes fan, then we just have brainstem activity. But he jerked his foot plumb out of my hand. I remember that. And that was a confirmation to me, like, yeah, man, it's happening. They're going to see it. They're going to see it. Well, then it was rebutted by, well, they teach us in brain death class that could be just a brainstem type activity. It's not coordinated movement. It's more reflex than anything. I said, well, have you checked his pupils? When's the last time you checked his pupils? Give me a light. And by this time, they're a little more accommodating because I think some people on the team are starting to see, man, there might be something to this one. And I so appreciate that compassion that they took. Yeah, they were on the track. The decision had been made. They were going to harvest him. Everybody was on board with that. But a few of them, I believe, were starting to see things a different way. And I'm so thankful for clinicians that have compassion like that. But they still have to check the boxes and dot the I's and cross the T's because, I mean, that's what we have to do in the medical field. And so I said, do you have a pen light? Because I didn't have a light. I wasn't there working as a nurse. I didn't have a stethoscope or anything like that. So they got me a light and handed it to me, and they were checking. I said, no. I said, dim the lights in here. Turn that light off over his head. Let's see if these pupils respond. So they let me in there, and I actually put my hands over Zack's face like that so it could be good and dark. Because, man, if there was a shred of a possibility that those pupils were to respond, I might be able to get somebody to listen. And I knew what I had going on my heart. I knew what my wife had going on in her heart, that it was not his time. And sure enough, I opened one of his eyes, the one on the opposite side where the big injury was. I was trying to be slick, Doc. I wanted them to, if there was any other trauma there, I wanted to check the eye that was furthest away from the injury. Just clinging, trying to get them to see because I just knew. And we checked that eye, and sure enough, it closed up. That pupil responded, dilated. It was dilated and constricted real good. And so I said, y'all seen that, didn't you? Did y'all see that? And one of them was kind of like this, and the other ones, they were kind of denying it, but one of them seen it, I remember. I don't know who she was. And she said, well, sir, they teach us that could also be a reflex response. I said, what do you need to see? She said, they teach us in brain death class that unless the person can have coordinated movement, such as moving an appendage across the midline of the body. And I didn't know what to do. And I said, have you checked his pain receptors? And these are all little bitty, nothing against any female. I work with females every day. But Zack's a great big dude. He's got tree trunks for fingers, and they were using their little pins and pressing on his finger. It probably felt more like a massage to him, And even when I tried to use my pin on his fingernail to get him to move, it didn't work. So I just jabbed my fingernail up underneath his. That's pretty sensitive area right there. And boy, when I did, he reached across here. And I mean, I'm grinning ear to ear because I know now, And while he was over here, there was a lady over here, I think she was doing some final typing and crossing. She was gathering some specimens from his pick line. And he grabbed her hand and then threw his leg off the bed and began to sit up. And about that time, I started shouting orders, that we needed some propofol in here and get him calmed back down. You don't want that swelling to get, because I was watching his intracranial pressure. It was increasing, and we didn't want that right then. But at least we had this, and I kept asking. I said, can I please talk to the doctor? Through all these questions I was asking, can I please talk to the doctor? Well, when he reached over and grabbed that woman's hand, she said, I'm going to get the doctor on the phone. I said, I believe that's a good idea. And sure enough, things turned around from there, and Zack's here today. And I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that God would use just regular folks, And I'm thankful that he lined things out in that room to get people to look, because he knew what they were thinking. Them people were blessed along their path of learning just like I am, and nothing was wrong by anything they was doing, I don't think. But based on the knowledge that they had, which is a great amount, I think that they're very highly skilled, trained people. But the one that made that system was communicating with us. The one that designed Zack before his mama even knew him was giving us the direction. And I'm so thankful for that.
Dan, he was certainly instrumental at keeping them continuing to treat Zack, would you say?
Very. I believe that God just gave him the ability to know what to do, know that something was not right, that Zack wasn't actually ready to go.
Yes.
And if it hadn't been for that, then I don't want to think about what.
Yes. Did they tell you that Zack was brain dead?
Yes. They said that he had no blood flow to his brain at all. They showed us an image of his brain, and it was totally black. not just part of it, but the entire image was black. And they just said that he had absolutely no blood flowing to his brain and that he wouldn't recover from it.
Yes.
It was news that
Did
no
they-
one but no parent wants to hear.
Did they tell you to tell him goodbye?
Yes, they did. They told us to gather anyone that wanted to see him in so that they could say their goodbyes to him.
Yes. So, Vanessa, you didn't know Zack at the time of the accident, did you?
No, sir. No, sir. I just knew his mom because she taught me in the 3rd grade.
Yes. So,
I met Zack a year later after his accident.
yes. So, it was very close to their taking Zack's organs. And if they would have done that, you wouldn't have Zack, would you?
No, I wouldn't have my Harley and Zack's family. So I've gained a lot marrying Zack.
Yes. So Zack is special, and obviously you have a family, Zack and you and Harley, a wonderful family, and of course, I told you a few minutes ago that you were beautiful, and I guess your dad tells you that too, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Yes.
and my mom.
And your mom, sure. They love you a lot, don't they? You love them. Yes. So Zack is a very special person.
Yes, he is.
Yes, and of course his life was continues on because of God and his cousin, who did one more thing to get some response. So they did not take his organs. If
Yes,
they
sir.
would have taken his organs, we wouldn't be here talking, would we?
You're right.
Yes. So, are you an organ donor?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Would you like to reconsider that now?
Probably so. Yes, sir.
Yes.
It makes sense.
Yes. Makes sense not to be an organ donor because every organ that's transplanted is taken from a living person. There are no organs you can get from a cadaver.
Yes, sir.
You can get some tissues, but that differs from organs. Every organ that's transplanted comes from a living person. Then the living person either is no longer on earth or not the same as the person was before. Do you have any advice or thoughts to other people, relatives who might find their relative unconscious and on a ventilator?
Spend time with them, pray with them, and encourage them.
And not give up.
Yes, sir.
Some other people that are unconscious on a ventilator end up having their organs taken. You were very close to that, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
And your cousin, who's a nurse, did another test and got some response, and that stopped them from taking your organs.
Yes, sir. If it wasn't for him going the extra steps to try and prove, then my heart, liver, and lungs would be in somebody else. And there ain't a guarantee that they work for them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.